Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Pharmacist Healing Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Izabella Wentz, and I'm so excited to have Kyle Lasota joining us today. We're going to be talking about how to shorten the learning curve to healing. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Kyle. He's also known as the Wellness Daddy. He is the Chief Daddy Officer at wellnessdaddy.com, a media company that helps people find the best products, people, and ideas in health and wellness. He has spent $250,000 on his health by the age of 30 because he was looking for answers. So now he helps people save time, energy, and money by cutting the learning curve and acting as a filter for people to find what they're looking for. And I'm going to just give a little bit of a spoiler alert, but for everybody listening with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, Kyle is one of us.
Yes.
So, welcome, Kyle. It's so great to have you. And I always ask people, how did they become who they are today? And I know for a lot of us in the wellness space, it has something to do with our own health. Is that the same with you?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The way it started for me was in my early 20s, I started having panic attacks, started having anxiety, started having skin issues, started having gut issues, and a bunch of like weird symptoms that were seemingly all happening at once and were kind of feeling interconnected. But I was going to all the different doctors and they were saying that I was stressed. And through that process of getting passed around, and one doctor even told me, he's like, hey, I think you have like some type of rare cancer or something, because my immune system was like low, my white blood cell count was low. And or no, he told me I had HIV.
Wow, that's so scary.
And I'm like 22, had never been sick in my entire life. And I'm having panic attacks. So you tell a kid at 22 who's never been sick in his life that, this is the situation, that'll definitely make things worse. So to make the story very short, basically the TLDR is I spent 5 years trying to figure out what was going on. And in that time, I spent about 150. And after that, I basically gave up on finding the answers. And it wasn't until I met this one health coach who I just kind of met through happenstance. And he started working with me, taught me about the circadian rhythm, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And then he gave me one test, and that was the Great Plains Organic Acids test with the mycotoxin profile. And it came back really, really high with Aspergillus mold. And finally, now I felt vindicated. Like, okay, here's what's going on. And so I did this mold protocol and I was super diligent, did everything he told me to. And within 3 months, I cleared the mold completely out of my system. And it was like the lights came back on. And I was like, whoa, this is what it feels like. This is what it was supposed to feel like this whole time. And from the point that I got sick to that point, I had sort of started self medicating and was doing quote unquote biohacking before biohacking was even a thing, and had found some good tools and practices to sort of manage my symptoms. And then now I was on the other side of it and I was like so excited, so liberated. And then a couple months later, I got COVID. And then a month after getting COVID, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And that was it was a new level of intensity of like sickness that I've never experienced before. And all the tools that I was using before were now making things worse. And so I kind of had to go back to the drawing board and just start over and kind of rethink this whole thing. And I'll just like leave the story at that for now. And then we can dig into more of what you think is going to be most impactful.
Well, I feel like as a woman, most women go through 5, 10 years plus before they get diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And a lot of times it's women in their 40s or in their 50s. They're having trouble losing weight. And this is something that can get picked up a lot earlier. And I'm just curious your journey as a man with Hashimoto's, because I feel like a lot of doctors, they don't even think about that for men, right? They think of it as like an older woman's disease, not a young man's disease. What kind of symptoms were you having and what led to that diagnosis?
Well, I was kind of fortunate to be working with that health practitioner at the time because I was still working with him when I got COVID, and COVID was actually really mild. It was just kind of like a bad cold. But then later, like a couple weeks later, things started to get really intense, and I was having crippling anxiety, and I could not sleep to save my life. And I've never had that problem before. And then I started reacting to different foods that otherwise would have been fine. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was also having blood sugar issues, and I had never had blood sugar issues before. I didn't know what that felt like, or at least I didn't know, like, I had no connection to that. And I felt very unsafe, like I was being attacked. That's what it felt like. And I lost so much weight so fast. I lost like 10 pounds. I'm already a pretty lean guy. So I was about 110 pounds. And yeah, I felt pretty immobilized.
It's the symptoms that you went through. I feel like you probably got diagnosed at a pretty early time. A lot of people, they go through that in the early stages of Hashimoto's where they're actually losing weight.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, anxiety, panic attacks, these are going to be the initial symptoms because you can get that thyroid hormone rushing into your bloodstream from the autoimmune attack against the thyroid.
Mm.
And that can cause those panic attacks and anxiety. And so I feel like you were, I don't know if fortunate is the right word, but it's I think wonderful that you were recognized so early.
Yeah, that guy that I was working with, as soon as these symptoms started showing up, he ran the Cyrex panel, the multiple autoimmune panel, and yeah, it came back positive for the antibodies of Hashimoto's. And then he told me, he's like, "Hey man, like I don't know how to break this to you. I'm really sorry, but this is what's showing up." Um, and then I started working with more thyroid doctors and different people who are specialists in that area. And then they kind of broke down for me how the autoimmune process works and with the triggers and how to go about, like, okay, trigger by trigger. But the other element that was so challenging to get through was this thing that developed called long COVID. And no one really knew what long COVID was until like 6 months into what I was already experiencing. And it's hard to discern what was long COVID and what was Hashimoto's because the symptoms are kind of similar. But that that was a totally different path that I had to take because I had to address that viral piece of it as well as the autoimmune reaction.
Yeah, various viruses can be, and all kinds of infections can be associated with new onset Hashimoto's. And at first, we weren't sure what COVID was or what COVID did, but the research has shown that it can absolutely trigger autoimmune thyroid disease. And so, this is something that I feel like more and more people are becoming aware of, and more people are getting that Hashimoto's diagnosis as a result of having been exposed to COVID. Did you have elevated thyroid antibodies or changes in your TSH on blood testing as well?
Yeah, my thyroid antibodies were really high, and I don't remember what my TSH was high, but I remember, and still to this day, my actual thyroid numbers are normal. So like I remember going to a doc and being like, "Hey, your thyroid's fine," and I'm like, "Dude, run the antibody test. Like I know I'm not fine." And then of course it's like above 600.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what the number was, but it was significant. And I remember I went to a bunch of different doctors, endocrinologists, all these people, and I'm like, should I be getting on medication? Like, and all of them were like, no, like your thyroid numbers are fine, quote unquote, and you're so young. It's like once you get on thyroid medication, it's pretty hard to get off. Um, and I was like, okay, I'll just deal with this, right? But I was already in the holistic space, so I was like, okay, I know there's a diet. I know there's some lifestyle things. I know there's some supplements. when the guy that I started working with for a while, when it first happened, he like laid out all the triggers. I'm like, cool, here's my plan. Let me work the plan. And yeah, that was basically the other thing that happened was that I want to mention is I feel like I might have had the stage 1 or something the whole time. And it was just like lurking underneath the surface. And the mold probably was the initial sort of thing that was creating that. And then some stress going on in my life, some spiritual stuff, some, you know, an infection, a gut infection here, a gut infection there, you know, so there was like these different things that were like filling up the bucket. And then my mom has Hashimoto, so I was genetically predisposed to have it. So, you know, it's like I was kind of set up for this condition a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because there's 5 stages to Hashimoto's, and stage 1 is just the genetic predisposition, where for all intents and purposes, your thyroid function is normal and you don't have any antibodies against your thyroid gland. There's no destruction of your thyroid gland happening by the immune system. Stage 2 is when you have those high thyroid antibodies, but then your thyroid gland is not damaged enough where you need thyroid hormones and it could still compensate and it could still make enough of its thyroid hormones. Stage 3 is when you go into that progression of autoimmune disease and the thyroid gland starts to get lose its ability to produce thyroid hormones. They're still normal, but your TSH gets elevated. Stage 4 is when you are overtly hypothyroid and your TSH is elevated and you have low levels of T3 and T4. This is the stage where most people get diagnosed. And this is where conventional medicine steps in. This is the stage where they're like, here are the meds.
Yeah.
Stage 5 is a progression to additional autoimmune conditions. Now, you getting diagnosed so early in stage 2, you have an opportunity to stop or prevent the progression. And so you can actually preserve your thyroid function, and perhaps you might not need thyroid hormones. So that's a big benefit. The other flip side of that, as a thyroid expert, what I see is sometimes, even in the early stages, thyroid meds can help. And they don't always have to be a life sentence. For some people, if they're highly symptomatic, and I typically I work with a lot of women, if they're trying to conceive and they have high thyroid antibodies, a lot of times like a tiny dose of thyroid hormone can be very helpful. And it's very controversial for people who aren't women trying to conceive to use thyroid hormone when they only have thyroid antibodies. But I feel like when people are symptomatic, sometimes that can be a plus. But there's also a lot of things from a lifestyle standpoint that we can do to really eliminate those thyroid antibodies and just to help the thyroid recover. So I know you've been diving deep into those, and it's very I feel like you're in a really great place where you can make a lot of impact for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, I have always been a very resourceful person. And because I saw such great relief in the impact of working with the right person and getting basically liberated from my symptoms and what I was experiencing with the mold, there was never a question in my mind of whether I was going to get into remission or not. It's just a matter of the timeline, you know, and I think the universe works in mysterious ways. And so there's a divine timeline for me of when that gets to happen. And that's always been felt very true and very close to home.
I love that. We had talked about when we got together a few weeks ago, we had talked about the difference between illness and wellness and the importance of mindset and having a healing mindset. I was hoping you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. In my worldview, the difference between illness and wellness is illness starts with I and wellness starts with we. And so when you see people who are suffering from quote unquote illness, their life is very small. Their life is about them and their problems and their symptoms and their disease and their condition and them, me. And so when you think about someone who is truly well, they have the capacity within their system to give onto others and to be of service. And some of the sickest people I know are the people who only think about themselves. And so on my journey, I came to that stark realization after just butting my head up against the wall for so long. And it's like it's kind of like this weird, maybe you can relate to this, where it's like the dog chasing its tail. It's like the more you sometimes you focus on like your health, sometimes the worse it gets. Whereas when you start to put your focus onto others and other people's health, then by nature that you are like a conduit where that has to like flow through. So I don't know how it showed up in your life, but like I imagine as you started to talk about thyroid stuff and Hashimoto's and what you were learning and how you were these discoveries you were making on your journey, I imagine you started to get a lot better.
Well, it was really, really interesting because I focused on physical healing. That was initially, I'm a pharmacist and I'm very much in my head, and I was focusing on my physical body. And when I got myself into remission, there were still a few things going on mentally for me, emotionally for me. And I remember meeting somebody who was an emotional healer, and she had mentioned that a lot of people with Hashimoto's and autoimmunity, they say the unkindest things to themselves. And I was like, wait, that's me,
Yeah.
right? And I was actually helping her with something else. Like we were talking about her business and I was helping her, advising her on something. And it was so, so eye opening. And it goes to your point, like I was starting to get out in the world. I had just published my book on Hashimoto's, and I was meeting all kinds of people through me spreading the word and getting the word out about people that I would have never met in my small circle of living in Chicago and having my friends from pharmacy school and some of my high school friends and some of my pharmacist colleagues, right? It was like we had our very own, I don't want to say limited worldview, but we had a very um, different worldview than a person that I met who had lived in Amsterdam and New York and had traveled the world as a spiritual healer. And so it's been very fascinating for me where I feel like healing can happen on a different level, right? So it's not, I don't know if I could say at first I'm like, I'm healed, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that I will ever say that because there are always things like I feel like I've healed so many things from that time. Like, and a lot of it has been my emotional resilience and my ability to handle stress. My food sensitivities. When I first got on my thyroid journey, I was very much like, oh my gosh, I need to restrict so many different foods. And now I don't. And so I feel like healing and wellness can really come in layers, right?
It does. And I think like when I think about health, I think health has a lot to do to coming home to who you really are. And like I think the best way to do that is and the best way to be well is to give what was taken from you. And that way it doesn't have the power over you. And so when I think about what I do and like wellness daddy and all that stuff, like why am I on this mission is because like what was taken from me was my wellness. So I give that to others. And by giving that to others, I then get it back. And I think it's so easy when you get diagnosed with anything or something happens to you to become a victim of circumstance. And I think you absolutely get to have that time to like grieve and to be upset and to be mad and to feel the full range of your emotions around like this specific event or this thing that's happening. And there's a natural progression that eventually you grow out of. Whereas like at first you start and discover is like the world is happening to me and I'm a victim of circumstance. Then you go into transform, which is like, hey, I'm taking my power back. I'm going to do something about it. And I don't care what it takes. I'm getting out of this situation. And then number three is awaken, where it's like, hey, that thing that actually happened to me was a gift. And now I'm meant to give that gift to the world. And so that's like the natural arc of the hero's journey. And I think disease, sickness, illness, it sounds like maybe hard for someone to digest if depending on where you're at in your development and stage of consciousness, but like disease, sickness, and any type of condition or diagnosis can be the best thing that ever happened to you. So it's like when you can have that relationship to whatever's going on with you, it's like it depolarizes the situation, and then there's so much more energy available for you to do what's actually necessary, like the diet and the supplements and the follow through that's required in order to really truly get to full resolution. And I have a friend named Logan Sneed, and he was diagnosed with like a brain tumor when he was like 20 or like 18 or something, 19, and it was a glioblastoma, which is like one of the most deadly brain tumors you can get. And he had a seizure. He like drove off the road in his car. They brought him to the hospital. They did some tests. They're like, okay, you have this thing in your brain. We have to get rid of it immediately. He gets the thing removed. Then he goes full keto and basically goes into remission. He's still living today. This is like 8, 9 years later. He built a $1 million business, like, and he wrote a book called Thank You Cancer.
Wow.
So like when you hear stories like that, it's like I feel like there's this energy of like, okay, like this is horrible. Yes, I'm gonna honor how bad this is, and what's the opportunity? What am I being called to do? And I think when we get into this energy of thinking about that contribution without, you know, discounting the things that are happening, so we have that experience. When we can get to a place where it's like, hey, there's something big, there's something calling me for bigger, and to serve, then the universe just gives us the energy that we need. And once we have that energy, we can do anything.
Yeah, yeah, I can really relate to that. I know when I was first diagnosed with Hashimoto's, it was like, oh, woe is me. Why am I so unlucky? Why did this happen to me? And I was in a very much like a victim mentality. And it took me some time to really get out of that and start thinking about what can I do to make myself feel better, and can I get into remission? How can I be the healthiest person with Hashimoto's, and what are some of the lifestyle changes I can do? What are some of the triggers? Um, and I think what really helped me go from this idea in my head to I have to make it happen is that I started to see some changes and some improvements. And then my little cousin in Poland got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And I was like, I really need to figure this out. I really need to document it all so that I can help my little cousin.
Mm.
My mom offered to translate the book into Polish. And then I sort of had this mission. I grew up in Poland and my mom was a physician. I always knew that I wanted to help people with their health. I went into pharmacy school with the hope of creating a new drug one day and sort of became disillusioned with, the pharmaceutical world. I love drugs, don't get me wrong. They serve a purpose. They can be very helpful, they can be very life-changing, but I felt like as a pharmacist, I was just handing out medications and I wasn't truly changing people's lives. And Hashimoto's gave me an opportunity to actually help people heal. And it started, of course, with healing myself. And now I get to do that. And it's almost as though I couldn't say this 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, but Hashimoto's has been like one of my greatest gifts.
Yeah.
Having this condition, it's taught me how to change my lifestyle. It's helped me evolve into a better version of myself. And now I get to help other people heal too.
Yeah. And I think I just want to highlight what you said, which is like you had this moment of realization where you're like, hey, I got to do this not just for me, but for my cousin. It's like immediately, like immediately when it stops becoming about you, there's more energy available, more drive. It's like it's a spiritual law that the the people who have made the most impact in the world are given access to the most energy. If you think about the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, unlimited, unlimited energy. And they weren't doing all the biohacks. Gandhi was fasting like crazy, right? So I think there's just something interesting there to just make a note of for people.
That's really, really fascinating because I had chronic fatigue. So from the time I was around 18, 19, I just had this awful, awful chronic fatigue. I somehow sludged through college, undergrad, grad school, pharmacy school, all of that. And I was still super, super fatigued. Once I recovered my health, I had endless energy. It was incredible because I went from somebody that was just all the time exhausted to I had this mission and I was able to spread the word and talk about all of the things that helped. And just all that energy was there. So I feel like you're onto something. Now, back when I started, I got my diagnosis in 2009. And, people at home doing the math, yes, I'm still 25. So just work your way backwards. But I got the diagnosis in 2009. And at first it was like, okay, what do I do? And end of 2009, 2010, I start looking for information on how I could get myself better. I started with like, my pharmacy school notes. And then I went into just basic forums. And then I got deeper into PubMed and I have access to medical journals just being associated with universities that I went through. So I was very fortunate where I got to pull a lot of information and then I got to go to conferences, integrative medicine conferences. And I had access to some things that people didn't just because I was a pharmacist. The information online was basically like you can rub coconut oil on your thyroid and take high doses of iodine, and that's what you need to do back in my day, right? And so I really had to figure out how to do all the things, and I tried a lot of things on myself. I was a bit of a human guinea pig. Now, these days, there's so much information out there with our social media and the wellness hacks and all of that. Like, how do you break through the noise to find what actually works and, perhaps without spending $250,000?
This is a very hard lesson that like people were explicit about to me, but I couldn't really wrap my mind around it until it got to the point where I spent this amount of money, which is like, I met with Brian Johnson, the crazy biohacker guy, who's spending $2 million a year to reverse his aging. And I love Brian. I think he is the sweetest guy. He's super open-minded and I love what he's doing for this space as a whole. Do I agree with everything that he's doing? No, absolutely not. And I think he's a sweet guy. And I was in the Netflix documentary with him, and that was like a moment for me. But he said something to me that I thought, I was like, wow, this is really like, if people can really get this, then it changes everything. Because I spent so much money, and you don't have to spend that much money to be healthy. And what it requires is, number one, you get the right data. So you actually know what's going on. The only reason why I spend so much money is because I didn't know I had mold. I didn't know I had Hashimoto's. I didn't know that these hypoglycemia. I didn't know that these things were going on because the testing that I got at the traditional doctors was just not up to par. And no one knew about environmental toxins and about these different triggers and the GI map and like, the H. pylori and all these things because they just don't know. So I would say number one is to really invest in good testing and find a practitioner who is the best. There's so many practitioners out there, so many. But it's like, if you want to learn about Hashimoto's and thyroid, you should probably work with Izabella, right? Like, you should probably read her books. She's dedicated more time and energy to this subject than probably anyone else on the planet. So it's like the quality of the information is super, super important. And so it can be easy to get confused because there's always a bunch of armchair experts that are kind of saying this thing or that thing, but really you only want to take advice from people who have the result that you want. No one else. If they don't have the result, don't talk to them. Don't listen to them because it's bad data. Or at the very best, it's incomplete. And so if you get the right data, instead of spending a decade like I did trying to figure out what was going on, you spend 3 weeks doing the right tests and then identifying what's really happening like below the surface. The next thing, that if you don't even want to spend any money or you want to spend very little money, because testing can be expensive, but hey, it's worth it. Spending $5,000 on testing to cover all your bases will change everything, because then you have a roadmap of like really full level what's going on. But if you don't want to spend the money on the testing, then mastering the fundamentals is where everyone gets to start. And it's like that time when you go to the doctor and they gaslight you and they're like, hey, I think you should probably just start exercising, or like, have you looked into like doing some breathing, and you like scoff at them and you're like, no, but there's something wrong with me, right? It's like, no, there probably is something wrong with you. And these things are the things that are going to move the needle. And that's what Brian Johnson told me. He's like, all this stuff that I'm spending all this money on, this is like bonus. There's big power laws. And the first one is removing the things that are bad for you. If you can just do that, you add 5 to 10 years of healthy life to your lifespan. That's not eating the fast food, minimal processed food. That's having a regular sleep schedule. That's working out and exercising consistently. That's eating a whole food diet. That's getting sunlight and having a purpose and community and things that you care about and are passionate about. It's like people really underestimate what those things can really do. And I wish someone had just hammered that into my mind until I went and tried all these crazy things. When it's like what I used to tell sleep coaching clients when I worked with people on sleep, which was a little saga side quest for me, was if you can't go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, how can you ever expect to do anything great in this world? It's just like pretty simple, but very hard to do. And if you can do that, like you can do a lot of things.
It's amazing. My mom used to say that. So my mom was a physician and I would complain about being tired and she would be like, it's because of your nighttime habits and you need to go to bed every night at the same time and you can't be watching TV at night before you go to sleep. And why are you eating Burger King again? Why don't you eat some real food? And my mom would tell me all of these things. And of course, I was in my late teens and in my 20s, and I had a lot of chronic fatigue. And I was like, and she would be like, and you know what? Your room's a mess. You need to clean up your room. You're anxious? Clean up the room. Like you're depressed? Clean up the room.
Yeah. Amen.
And for me, part of, I felt very like, oh, like, is that going to make a difference? And, I did all the life hacks, I did all the things. And now I go to sleep at a regular time every night. Like, I am so serious about my sleep. We put on red lights at night. I have stickers on every bit of blue light. I My sleep is so restorative. There's so much research about circadian rhythm balance, helping balance immune system. A lot of my ladies with thyroid fatigue, circadian rhythm balancing is a big thing that I'm a proponent of. So make sure you get plenty of sunshine during the day and make sure you don't get blue light at nighttime and sleep in an all dark room and all of that.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, my mother was right. And then listen, I try to keep my house tidy and neat. If I see a lot of clutter, it stresses me out. Yeah, it makes me feel tired when I look at a room that's a hot mess.
Yeah. It's very calming to walk into a pristine room. And like first thing in the morning when you're like waking up and like getting your day started and you just walk into like a very, very aesthetic and like beautiful and just clean surfaces, everything's wiped down. It's like you don't need to be OCD about it, but there's something it does to your nervous system where it just goes, oh, I can just start my day like nice. Okay, let's go. And so I think it's so underrated is just like really doing the free stuff. Just start with the free stuff. You can go outside, you can do some exercise, you can get some sunlight, you can put your feet on the grass, you can go to bed at the same time, you can drink high quality water, you can, just do these really simple things. And regardless of your condition, all of it's going to help. All of it's going to help. It's just the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are the fundamentals for a reason. So that's step number one is like, okay, let's just do the big power laws. Let's stop binging Netflix. Let's have a low screen time. Let's not drink too much alcohol or any at all. Like let's not smoke. Let's do these like really like those things really move the needle. And then once you've mastered those things, but those things take years to master. Like you could spend a year learning about sleep. Then you could spend a decade learning about exercise and a decade learning about nutrition. So it's like these things take time. But I think the mindset that I adopted that really helped me was the mindset of the slight edge. And the slight edge is this book by this guy named Jeff Olson. And the slight edge is all about 1% improvements, like the compounding nature of just doing a little bit each day. And when I got sick, I realized that this was going to be a long journey. And so if it's going to be a long journey, I need to set the right expectations of like a lot of stuff in my life gets to change. And so if I try to change everything all at once, it's going to be overwhelming, it's going to stress me out, and it's not going to be sustainable. So my friends kind of joke sometimes and they call me consistent Kyle because I just, with bone crushing consistency, like adopt these habits. And I just, I packed meals. So like I have like bison and vegetables and stuff that I brought with me because that's just a habit that I built over time of pre-making my food and then just bringing it in containers with me so that I don't make the mistake of skipping a meal or, you know, um, just being undernourished and not meeting my calories and stuff like that. But that all came from learning what not to do, from basically failing at doing the things that actually set me up for success. But that takes a lot of time to develop. And I think a lot of people have a short term mindset. And so, yeah, that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother sort of Pandora's box right there. So,
Yeah, we filmed at my house the other day and you brought like your own lunch in a glass container and it was so nutritious and healthy. The only thing I wish is that you brought 2 servings 'cause so whenever you're hanging out with me, just bring extra.
yes. Okay. Okay. I can do that.
But that's such a great thing most people can do because a lot of times people with Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, they get in a situation when they're like, I know I need to have my protein. I know I need to be gluten free and dairy free to feel my best, but they don't necessarily plan for it. So they end up becoming hypoglycemic when they go somewhere and they either have the choice of eating a sandwich with, gluten bread and cheese or going hangry. And so having those little habits of prepping your meals and, if you're traveling, maybe you can prepare some plain food.
Yeah, bring
Like,
some beef sticks, like very simple, simple, like, okay, I'm setting myself up for success, like thinking ahead, because that's where I think that the pitfalls show up.
um, I love that you talk about time wealth. And I always talk to people about creating the space for healing because I feel like a lot of us are so busy that to add in additional habits, to add in other things more to our life can feel a bit overwhelming. Can you share more about time wealth? Like, how did you do that? And what does it mean to you? And how can others do the same?
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I used to have a video marketing company and I was working with clients and I was doing really well, but it was very stressful. So revenue was up and down. I was traveling a lot and I'd have big months, then I'd have small months, and then I'd get stuck in fulfillment. And it was just kind of a nightmare business, even though I was so passionate about it and I loved it. When I started having these issues, I was like, this doesn't work for me anymore. I need to figure out a way to re engineer my business to basically support my health. Otherwise, I'll be stuck in this constant loop of stress and I will never be able to get better, like fully heal because I'll be stuck in fight or flight. And I intuitively knew that. Um, so, what I did is I started thinking about my business model and how could I set up systems that would make money for me regardless of if I was working or not. And that's when I stumbled into YouTube and affiliate marketing. And I started learning about how to build systems and how to outsource. And if you've never been exposed to this idea that people can do things for you for less than your hourly rate, then this might be like a breakthrough sort of moment. And for people who aren't entrepreneurs, you can still apply all of these principles to your life. And I'll explain how you can do that and what are the best places to start with this idea, which is if you think about what are the things that you love doing most and what are the things that you hate doing most, usually those things that you hate doing most can often be done by someone else for really a small wage. And I was at a mastermind one time, and this guy gave a presentation. And he talked about how he was doing like over $100 million in revenue with this like ticket company, and the whole business was run by VAs in the Philippines. And he said something to me that I'll never forget, which is like when you discover that everything that you do can be done by someone for $2 an hour, you become very unimportant. And I think people have a lot of attachment to the things that they do because it gives them significance and makes them feel important. And so I had to go through this process of letting go of what made me feel significant so that I could hand it off to other people and then they could do it. And then I could be supported in my business instead of me trying to do everything myself. And then also structuring the business in a way where it wasn't based on my time. So between handing things off to other people and me changing the business model, I got to a place where I was making the same money, but working like 5 hours a week. And it kind of like, it made me uncomfortable at first because I felt like, well, these people are working so hard and everyone else is working so hard. And there was a lot of like shame that was like coming up. And I kind of had to like work through that around, no, it's okay. I'm just working smarter. I'm just being more effective. And then I started to push the envelope of how far I could take this. And what this turned into is me outsourcing my cooking, me outsourcing my cleaning, and then me outsourcing basically everything in the business that wasn't coming up with ideas, shooting the video, and making deals with companies. And so now that's all I do inside of my business and nothing else. And so inside of your role, if you're a 9 to 5 or you work a job, there are people who can do aspects of your job or aspects of your home life for very, very small wages. And what you can do is as you start to create more time, then you can use your time in higher leverage ways. And when you start using your time in higher leverage ways, then you can start making more money. And then it's this cycle where it kind of feeds itself. And the reason why this is so important to health is because I really think we need time and space to heal. And when we're constantly going, we're always in this like sympathetic overdrive and we're never in a deep state of rest. And most people have no idea what it feels like to be in what's called ventral vagal tone, which is the pathway in the parasympathetic nervous system that is the pathway of like safety and connection and all is well in the world. And when you're constantly activated and stimulated by, life and business and work and family and everything, it's very hard to touch that. And so I'm a big proponent of people liberating themselves from what they think they need to do so that they can do what they actually have to do to get better. Because it takes time to exercise. It takes time to meditate. It takes time to go for the morning walk. It takes time to have the healthy food and to be present with your food and to really chew it, 25 bites per chew, and to be present with your family and all this stuff that makes us feel good. And I just think at this day and age, there's no excuse and no reason why everyone has to do all the things that they have to do. There are plenty of people out there that want to help you. And so you just got to be okay with receiving that help.
You know, thank you so much for that. I think this is a huge mind shift that a lot of us need to hear, including myself. I know for me, it's been an ongoing journey. I'm an immigrant and we come to the States and we do everything ourselves. And I was always like a very high achiever. And one of the first things I did, so my mom loves cleaning and she loves a clean house. I love a clean house. I hate cleaning. And so the bane of my existence was when I was sick and I would work, my job in public health during the week, and every Saturday I'd spend the entire day cleaning. Oh. And I'd clean my entire small apartment and I would do a terrible job with it. And I was like so miserable cleaning it. Eventually, I figured out, hey, I could hire a cleaner to come on Saturday and they'll do it like in 2 to 3 hours. They'll do a better job than I did. And I ended up working at a pharmacy on Saturdays for 4 hours. And I made more money than I paid the cleaning ladies, but I only had to work like I would have spent 8 hours cleaning. Yes. I only had to spend 4 hours now at work, and I had money left over and I had time left over, and my house looked so much better and it made me so much happier. And then I don't think I share this often, but I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful husband and we met at a pretty young age. But when I was really, really sick with Hashimoto's, I had been working like 2 jobs essentially. And I was very high achiever, working all of these hours. And eventually I was like, I just need the space and time for healing. And I was working only part-time so I could go to the doctor appointments, so that I could prepare my food, so I could get my sleep, so I could go to yoga. And I was very fortunate that I had a very supportive husband who was able to, pay for our mortgage and pay for all the things and help me invest in my healing. And of course, not everybody has somebody like that in their lives. And other people, they really need to create the space for themselves. They have to be that supportive partner in their own healing journey. And sometimes that's being very creative with, maybe you hire somebody to, maybe you're a mom and you want to be present with your kids. That's not something you want to replace, but maybe you hire somebody to do your meal prep for you, or to clean up those darn toys off of the floor that like you step on in the middle of the night, like the Legos. So,
Yeah, no, and I wanna like just highlight something that here too, which is like the reason also why I systematized things and delegated so much was because when I got COVID and diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I only had about an hour of day of energy in me. So it was like that hour really counts. So it has to be the highest leverage thing that I can do. And I think for most high achieving people, it's like there's so much ego attached to like doing a lot. But like I think that the paradigm shift is like how can we attach our ego to being effective? Like instead of doing so much, how could we just do the right thing and do the most powerful thing? And luckily, because I continued to get better, but I set this business up the way that I did, it's like as I get more energy, as I heal more, as I have more capacity, I can work more. And I can work more on the things that I want, not just the things that I can only barely just get by. And I think if you set up your life and your business in this way, then no matter what happens, whether there's a illness or whether there's a money thing or whether there's a, you have to travel somewhere to go visit family or something, it's like everything is kind of like it's insulated because it's so well oiled. It's such a well oiled machine, whether it's your personal life or your personal health. Like I systematize my inbox and I systematize like I have like default messages that I send to people. And it's like I took it pretty far because I watched this video from this guy named Ari Meisel who healed his Crohn's disease by lowering his stress. And he lowered his stress by outsourcing everything. And so I really borrowed this idea from him because I knew stress was a big trigger for any autoimmune. So I was like, how can I lower stress as much as possible? And it's like, oh, well, the bills come in and then I forget about it. And it's like, okay, how do I systematize that? And it's just like looking for these opportunities, and it doesn't even have to cost a lot of money. And it's like the amount of just like space you get back in your head is just like it's worth it tenfold.
yeah, I love that. I came across Ari Meisel's work somewhere, I want to say in 2015, and it was life changing for me. I actually started using it with my Hashimoto's clients, where I would give them a checklist of how to create space for healing. And it would be, okay, put your bills on auto pay. Can you get grocery delivery? Can you, outsource this? And sometimes it does cost more money. Sometimes it can actually save you money. And more importantly, it could save you time, right?
The grocery thing is so big. Like if you only get one thing from this section of the podcast, it's like outsource, like never go to the grocery store again unless you truly love it.
Yeah.
But like you can get grocery delivery and it's free now, or it's like $100 a year or something from Instacart. Like that is at least 5 to 10 hours a week that you just get back like that,
Yeah,
if not more, if not more.
absolutely.
Like so, just yeah, start with that.
I love browsing like Whole Foods and health food stores. Like I just do that for fun. Sometimes like I'm one of those weird people that would wake up on like a Saturday morning and be like, oh, it's 8 a.m. Nobody's at Whole Foods. I'm just gonna walk the aisles. But it's one thing to like do it when you enjoy it. And it's another thing to like do it every single week and then, or, running out of toilet paper or running out of this. And when you put some of these things on, you know, automate them, then you don't have to really think about it and you never run out of toilet paper. And, you don't have to like go to the store in the middle of traffic because that can be super stressful. And you could use that time for, I don't know whether that's making more money or really working on your health, depending if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a wellness seeker, or maybe you're both. We're talking a lot about identity shifting in this conversation. Can we talk a little bit more about your identity shifting program?
Yeah. So I'm working on this program called Shift. And the idea behind the program is the way that I got out of the situation that I got out of is I basically architected a character. And so who I am today was all designed. And so I mapped out this version of Kyle and I mapped out his business. I mapped out his lifestyle, how he spent his time, who he spent his time with, how he dressed, how he presented himself, how he spoke and communicated, what he looked like. I, every detail, I got very explicit with it. And I had this binder, had all this imagery in it, and it had who Kyle was. He was a wellness influencer. He was like all these things, and I looked at the binder a few months ago, and 90% of the stuff came true.
Wow.
And the remaining 10% is on its way. And I hypnotized myself and brainwashed myself into becoming this person. And this was when I was really sick, really sick. Like if you saw the pictures and the videos, you'd be like, whoa, that's rough. And I was making this video for the program today, and I saw like basically the before and after of like when I was really sick to like a few weeks ago. And the transformation was insane. And I started to cry because it's like I realized how powerful this process was. Without it, I don't think I would have made it out of my situation. Like I literally felt like I was on the edge of death. And I had to have this conversation with God of just like, hey, like, is this my moment? Like, let me know. Like I need a sign that like I'm gonna be all right, or this is my time. Just like make it clear. And I remember I ran out. I was living at my grandma's house at the time. I ran out of her house crying, screaming to God, asking for help. Please let me know. Give me a sign. And then I got a sign. It's like, hey, it's not your time. There's a whole story there, but it was so loud and clear. Hey, this isn't your time to go. So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, we're gonna make it out of this. But I really need to start focusing on not what's wrong, but who am I gonna become? And the whole impetus behind Wellness Daddy was I had grown a lot and gotten myself out of this situation, but I felt pretty stagnated. And this comes back to the like thinking about myself versus like thinking about others. And I realized that I needed to play a bigger game and I needed to stop making it about Kyle. And I had a personal brand called Kyle Got Camera, which was from the videographer days. And it was like incongruent to like the stuff that I was talking about. And so I was like, what can be the name? What is it going to be? And I didn't want to do just Kyle Lasota. Like I wanted it to be bigger than Kyle. Hence, you know, being of service and stuff like that. So my friends would always joke around. It's like, hey, daddy speaking when you pick up the phone. And it would always be like just joking about this stuff. And health can be so serious sometimes. And I felt like my life had become so serious. My life had become so much about healing and so much of just about like the business and all this stuff. And I was like, I want my life to feel lighter. I wanted to feel like more fun. And I don't want to take myself so seriously. And that's kind of like what Wellness Daddy like spawned into. It was like, okay, this is Wellness Daddy. I'm clearly not taking myself too seriously, right? Like it's definitely like a joke, but there's some like playful things that you could do with that. And it was about this brand's gonna outgrow me at some point. And that's an identity that I can also grow into. So it's picking this new point in the future, this reality that exists where Kyle's already in remission, where Kyle's thriving, where Kyle's like a multi-sport athlete while he's traveling around the world. He's got total food freedom and he's, you know, has resilient gut and nervous system is unmatched and everything underneath the sun. And when I make that decision to live from that place, I alter reality. And when I alter reality, I start making different decisions because that I'm acting from that identity. And because I'm making different decisions, I get different results. And because I get different results, then I get different feedback. Then I get different feedback, then it feeds that identity. And it's like cognitive behavioral therapy, where the more I do different things, the more I have different thoughts, and thoughts are things. And so when I think differently, I create differently. And then reality starts to bend and change. And so the reality where Kyle has Hashimoto's doesn't exist anymore. And so instead of just like aiming for remission, I'm aiming for something that has way bigger energy, wellness daddy energy. And this is, I believe, what's required in order to achieve any health outcome long term. Whether you want to lose weight or put on muscle or beat a disease or heal your gut or balance your hormones or whatever your thing is, you get to change how you see yourself. Because as if you keep identifying with your condition and your disease, you're going to keep having it. And I know that there's a reality that exists where Kyle doesn't have any of these issues. And I think that's the same for everyone else out there watching and listening. And it takes a lot of courage to be a different person and to tell a different story. And so I actually don't even like telling my story that much because it's replaying an old version of Kyle that doesn't exist anymore. And so I'll tell it because I know it's going to be impactful, and like I'm disconnecting myself from it even though it was a part of my journey, because eventually you got to rewrite the story.
Hmm. That's so powerful. I love that you have this and you're teaching people on how to shift their identities. I know this is a big part of the process that I take people through. People oftentimes think it's like, oh, I change their diet or I give them supplements. But a lot of the work that I do is very much focused on mindset and creating your identity and creating a healthy version of you and thinking about what are the things you want in your life. When I first was empowered to take charge of my health, I didn't really know what my outcome would be. I didn't have all the answers. What I did have was a mirror. And so I would stand in front of the mirror and I would say, I'm Izabella Wentz. I'm in charge of my own destiny. And I would do that like every single day until it felt true. And I feel like there's so many different things that we like to shift from that illness mindset to I'm a healing mindset. This is such a big shift. So many women say, and men, oh, they really identify with their disease,
I never say my Hashimoto's
right?
ever.
They'll say, my Hashimoto's, my hypothyroidism, I'm a thyroid patient, and so on and so forth.
I'm a survivor. I don't even say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or a warrior,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that holds such different energy than I'm healing Hashimoto's or I'm on my healing journey is which is one of my favorites.
Or even better, which is I'm an athlete.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
and
a totally different timeline,
different
right?
timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to share the most important thing that you can use to shift your identity that I just learned this week that I'm going to be incorporating in my program. Can I do that?
Yes, I love that.
So I just met with Chase Hughes, who's the #1 human behavior expert in the world, and he trained CIA operatives and government agencies on brainwashing and interrogation and influence and persuasion. And he needs to change like guys in the office into basically Jason Bourne very quickly. And if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't accomplish that, then, they could die or other people could die or, there could be big ramifications. So he has the most powerful influence techniques known to man in his toolkit. And he said, when I asked him about how do we change our identity to this person that doesn't, have this condition or, has a health outcome that we want, he said, people will spend a lot of time working on their identity. And this comes from like the I am statements and stuff like that. And they're working at it, they're working at it, they're working at it. And then eventually the bottom shifts. And that could take years. But why don't we just start right at the bottom? He's like, there's actually something below the identity. And I was like, interesting. Tell me more. Right.
Yeah.
And this ties into what you said, which I think you'll love, which is worldview. So identity is about how like I feel about myself and how I see myself. Worldview is about how I see the world. And the 3 most important worldviews someone can have in order to achieve any health outcome they want is #1, I'm in control, which is kind of what you said. Hey, I'm Izabella Wentz, and what is it?
I'm in charge of my own
And I'm in
destiny.
charge of my own
Yeah.
destiny. That's basically I'm in control. #2 is the world is a friendly place and everything's going to be okay.
Love that.
And we can get deeper into that in just a sec. And then the third one is I'm willing to experience 10 out of 10 discomfort to get what I want.
Wow. Powerful.
And so the reason why that's so important is because if I'm in control, then you take full responsibility and you have agency, right? You're not a victim of circumstance. The second one is the world's a friendly place and everything's going to be okay, is that you can relax. You can
Yeah.
relax into, hey, things are going on right now. It's stressful, but everything's going to be all right. So you can maintain composure during chaos. And then the third thing is the 10 out of 10 discomfort. The reason why that's so important is because change can be very uncomfortable. And the good news is it's only uncomfortable in the beginning, but then it becomes a habit and then you don't think about it. So, big takeaway from this podcast for anyone out there is to integrate these worldviews and embody them. And when you do, everything else changes automatically. You're working at the very foundational level, so everything upstream just kind of happens.
So you've tried and researched so many different things. Can you tell us about some of the products that get like the Wellness Daddy seal of approval that passed the sniff test?
Yeah, we call this Wellness Daddy Certified. And for me, I don't recommend products that I personally wouldn't take myself. And, or if for whatever reason I wouldn't take them, I would have to feel okay recommending them to my mom. So those are like the two filters for me. And then usually what I found with products is oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the products with the worst marketing usually have the best quality. And so I want to look for founders that are product focused. And usually they might even be a little bit on the spectrum or something. Like they're just so intense about this thing or this idea, and they're very obsessed, and they do lots of R&D. And so when I find those companies, usually the founders are pretty bad at marketing. And so part of what Wellness Steady does as a media company is we give those products a platform. And so I'm always on the hunt for things that kind of have that appeal to me personally. And the things that have stayed with me that I continue to use are number one, air purifier. The one that I use and love is the Jasper. It's beautiful, it's aesthetic, it's industrial grade. And Mike, the founder, is an absolute legend. And I just think that he built a world-class product. And only now are people starting to hear about it because he spent years in research and development trying to create this thing. And I'm a huge proponent of air purification in the home because of bad indoor air quality and mold. And most homes have mold, but you don't need to destroy your house and gut it. You just need some good air filtration most of the time. And so getting a few Jaspers in the home is a really, I think, advantageous thing that anyone can do and should do, or at least get some type of air purification in your home. That's the one that I recommend. Then next would be water. So the water filter that I like and recommend for reverse osmosis is the AquaTrue. And then if you can get it, then get spring water delivered, ideally in glass, if not BPA-free plastic. Then the third thing that I use every day, which is blue light blocking glasses, and then Philips Hue lights in my home for things to go red in the evening, like it's just like at your home. The company that I use for blue light blocking glasses is called Raw Optics. Super high quality lenses. The dude's obsessed with the product and the research and development. So when I see people like that, I'm like, yeah, that more of that. And then I'm a huge fan of the 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep is this like cooling mattress topper that you put on your bed, and it's just a game changer. It's like if sleep optimization was a video game, this 8 Sleep is like cheat codes. It just like makes everything so much easier. And then I'm obsessed with red light therapy, especially for people with Hashimoto's. There's really great evidence to support that it can lower your thyroid antibodies, and it just helps with all the symptoms like fatigue and mitochondrial dysfunction. And there's like, it feels like a magic pill as close as you can get to that. And the company that I like is called Red Light Therapy Co. The reason why I chose that company is because Ari Whitten, who's the guy who like wrote the book on red light therapy, advised them on how to make their product better. And I met the founder, and he's definitely not a marketer. He's definitely kind of a nerd, and is super intense and obsessed with just like low EMF, has the pulsing feature. And then I would say the last two things that I do that honestly, I think everyone should really look into these two things, which is functional patterns. which is a methodology of training that's all about your gait mechanics. So standing, walking, running, and throwing are their big four movements that they focus on. So it's strength training specifically to improve that specifically. So I go to FP Texas in Austin and can't recommend it enough. Like I try to convince all my friends to go there. I think it will change the way people think about exercise. When they start going and they start to get it, it will change how you stand and sit. It will change how you move through space. And by nature of that, it changes your perspective on the world because, and we'll get into this when we talk about network spinal and network chiropractic, it is a similar sort of ideology where our posture signals to our body many, many things. And so a lot of times when you get sick or ill, especially if there's an emotional component, you contort into a posture. And that posture is kind of a defeated, like protecting, like the world's not safe type of posture. And so really working through that is really an important part of being healthy, in my opinion. And on the more energetic emotional side of that, network spinal is like energy work meets chiropractic. And they do these like gentle touches on your back that basically signals to a certain part of your brain to reconnect to that part of your nervous system. And the reason why this is so important is because in their philosophy, the way that gravity hits your spine determines your perspective on the world. And so if you can't experience something emotionally, then you'll contort into a posture and then you'll live your life through that posture and repeat those same emotions and recreate experiences that will mimic what you need to feel until you're ready to feel it. And so by going through this process, you connect to that part of your nervous system that is holding that emotion. And when you do that, it liberates that emotion. You experience it, which takes seconds to minutes. And once you do it, it goes away. And then your spine readjusts itself. And I do that twice a week, every week for the last 3 years. And I would not be here today if I didn't do that. Like the lady that I go see, Dr. Jeannie, is an absolute godsend. And she really put me back together. It's like every time I fell down, every time I had a flare up, or every time I had a misstep, or, you know, anytime something really bad happened, I was able to rebound really quickly because it trains your nervous system to adapt to more stress. So we talk about with Hashimoto's, like, okay, we want to lower the stress as much as possible. But I got to a point where there's no more stress to lower. Like you can only lower your stress so much. Life is going to life. And business is stressful and I run a business. And so it's like, how do we become more resilient? How do we adapt? Not just lower, like, of course, we want to lower unnecessary stress and we want to increase our resilience simultaneously. This and functional patterns helps you do that.
I love that. Resilience is so key to healing. We had talked about mold. I know that's been a part of your journey, part of my journey, and a part of that is if our homes are built inefficiently.
Totally.
You have some incredible plans for building a healthy home. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
Yeah. So this feels like the vision, like that's going to come to fruition in a few years as I kind of like continue to build what I'm building right now. But one of the main drivers for Wellness Daddy is to build a healthy home from scratch, do everything to the nines, and then document the process and then share the blueprint and then open source it so other people can build on top of it and make it better. I feel like this is a huge, huge racket. Like how homes are built and like what people are taught in construction or not taught in construction and how architecture is done and all this stuff is like, it's so ripe for disruption. And so many people are getting sick and they have no idea why. And it has everything to do with the home that they're living in. The chemicals, the mold, the VOCs, the everything. It's just like, homes are now being built for two things, which is speed and cost. It's like, how can we do it as fast as possible for as little money as possible? And as a byproduct, the occupants are basically a victim of those choices. And I was a victim of it. Sounds like you were a victim of it. And so, I mean, and sometimes look, things happen, a pipe burst, water damage, like there's no way around that, or maybe there is. And that's what I want to explore. Like I looked into like hempcrete, which is like concrete made of hemp, where it's like mold can't grow.
Wow.
So even if there is quote unquote water damage, it's like there's no mold. So there's just a lot of interesting solutions. And this whole world is called building biology. And it's like a subsegment of a subsegment of a subsegment, the most niche of niche things. I think it started in Germany. And I went to this guy, Ryan Blazer's house, who runs a company called testmyhome.com. And he goes to people's homes and he, you know, investigates and does all these inspections and stuff. And he just really opened my eyes to this whole world. And I think that this is going to be one of the things that people talk about in the next 5 to 10 years. It's just really early right now. But I'm in the early stages of doing my own research and looking at what is this going to take. And I get to build a business up to a point where I can afford to build the house at the level that I want it to be in order to do it the right way.
I'm excited for that. Please, please, please keep me posted on that. I know everybody that's listening is probably wondering where to keep up with you. Where can we find more information about you and your work?
The best place would be on YouTube at Wellness Daddy or on the newsletter, wellnessdaddy.com. You just sign up for the newsletter and I send out emails every Friday.
Before we get into some of our rapid fire questions, can you tell us a little bit more about your non toxic product database?
Yes. So, in my quest to build a healthy home, I wanted to take the first step. And I was like, what am I like? This feels like such a BHAG, like big, hairy, audacious goal. And I was like, how do I break this into chunks? What's the first step? And the first step became obvious to me. It's like, well, let's start with all the products that go in the home. And when I started researching, I realized that, whoa, this whole world is so overwhelming. It's so confusing. It seems like everything is trying to kill us. And I'm like, I got to do this research for myself for this project. Why don't I just give this away for free? Like, why don't I just do all this work? Because I got to do it anyway for myself, but then make it into a resource that other people can have access to. Because especially when you're sick and dealing with some type of illness or condition, Hashimoto specifically, it's like, God, I remember there was periods of time where I felt just so triggered by everything and so sensitive to everything and also so afraid of like, is this going to kill me? Is this going to mess up my gut? Is this, and so it's like, I wanted to take the scariness out of this toxic world that we live in, where I see a lot of influencers and people, honestly, who I kind of respect in the space, just doing a lot of fear marketing and like, this is killing you and this is killing you and this is killing you. It's like every piece of content kind of felt and sounded like that. And while it's good that they're educating people about the problems that exist, I was like, dude, but what's the solution? Give me a recommendation. And no one was doing it. They were just telling me about the problem, not offering a solution. Like, what product should I buy instead? I get that the nonstick pans are killing me, but like, which one should I get? And then actually doing the researching and looking at which one you should get is still kind of unclear. It's like, is it ceramic? Is it stainless steel? Is it, is it cast iron? It's like, and there's always these asterisks around everything that I was finding. And I was like, I got to simplify this process. So I built this database of hundreds of products that go into the home, and me and my team screened all of them. And then we also put in a little bit of information inside the database for education of like, even if you don't buy any of the products that we recommend, here's what to look out for when you're buying. Like, these are the words and the jargon that these companies use to mask these chemicals or how these products were made, so that whether you're buying something from the database or not, you can absolutely get what you're looking for. And we reached out to all those companies and asked for discounts. So for as many of those products as we could, we got discounts. So it's basically, hey, we did months of work for you to figure out every product and got you discounts. Here it is. This is for you.
Thank you so much for creating that for all of us. I'm excited to check it out myself. The link is wellnessdaddy.com/database. And I'm also going to put it in the show notes so people can just click right through. Okay. Are you ready for some rapid fire
Yeah,
questions?
let's do it.
Okay, let's do this. What's a wellness hack that you absolutely refuse to participate in?
Eating raw organ meat.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I can hardly stomach cooked liver, so I try to take the liver supplements. But yeah, I just can't do the organ meats.
I mean, I'm with you. The most outlandish thing that you've ever tried for your health.
I did 60 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Um, and that was amazing. Like, I'm so glad that I did it, but it's pretty extreme. And then I
Yeah.
documented the whole process and made a video about it.
Did you do a hard shell or a soft shell
Hard shell
chamber?
at 2 atmospheres.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
2 hour sessions.
What benefits did you see?
I started to get my brain back post COVID, and I had way more energy. I was sleeping incredibly well. I was PRing in the gym every day, and I was going through an incredibly stressful time. I was putting on a 200% wellness event, and I was totally fine the whole time. And I think in the past that would have totally taken me out.
If you had to live on one healing food forever, what would it be?
Pasture raised ribeye.
Yes, my husband loves those too, and my son, my 6-year-old, just like
I could eat ribeye every day. It's so good.
we're gonna have you over for some ribeye dinner
I'm in.
soon.
I'm in. You don't got to twist my arm.
What's your biggest oops moment on your healing journey where something went wrong?
Yeah, pushing my H. pylori protocol for too long, which sent me into a flare. So I was on a H. pylori protocol for I think 5 months. I had a lot to clear out, and yeah, ended up being really bad.
Mm. Yeah, sorry to hear that. A lot of times it's like 2 months if you're doing an herbal protocol, but some of the challenges with the antimicrobial herbs is they can mess with your natural flora. Is that kind of what happened to you?
Yeah, I think it was good. It was good. I mean, protocols, depending on your resilience and like where you're at in that moment, can feel okay. Sometimes they can be kind of tough, and it was feeling tough, and then it got better, and I was like, okay, I could keep going, and then it just started going downhill. And then there's a couple other things. I was traveling. I got in some fights with my girlfriend at the time, and business was doing some weird stuff. So there's like some other stressors that came in, and I think it was just too much all at once. And and then I got re-exposed to mold. So it was like, kind of a combination of things, but I think I really wish I would have listened to my body a little bit more and let off the gas and like rested. But you live and you learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes rest is the best medicine, right?
Yeah, sometimes doing nothing is the most productive thing you can do.
Amen to that. If the supplement police came to your house and they raided all of your supplements and said, you have to give us every single one of your supplements, and maybe one of them decided to be a nice guy and was like, okay, I'll let you keep just one, what would be the supplement you'd keep?
This is a really tough one. It would be a battle between MagTech Magnesium from Natural Stacks, which is magnesium glycinate, threonate, and taurate, which I take almost every night for sleep, and then Tributylin X from healthygut.com. That has been really life changing for me.
Oh, I'd love to hear the effects of those two. What?
So, MagTech Magnesium is one of the most bioavailable forms of magnesium that I've come across, and they third party test every single batch, and they have an open source transparency policy on where they source their ingredients from, which is basically unheard of. So the quality standard that they have is super high, but then when you take it, your REM scores will go up, you'll get deeper REM sleep, and you'll have crazy dreams. It's very symptomatic of taking MagTech. When I put my friends on MagTech, they always report back with that. And I have had so many people on so many different types of magnesium, and I convert them to MagTech, and all of a sudden their sleep starts getting better. So I just think it's a really effective brand. And then the Tributylin one is, I'm doing some gut stuff right now, and uh, on the back of that H. pylori sort of like blowout, after I sort of normalized things a little bit, Tributylin was one of the first things I reintroduced, and I feel like it kind of just like fixed everything. Not completely, but like so much so that I was like really having some issues, and then it was like I'm having a little bit of issues, and then it's like it's pretty good as long as I stay on my diet. And I feel like it's one of those supplements that's kind of, I don't know, best kept secret type of thing. Like, yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, butyrate is such a game changer for food sensitivities. I love it, and I love Steve Wright, who created the company. So, as you know,
Yeah.
he's a dear friend of mine. So, I love that you've had incredible results with that. A lot of people have as well. Last question. Do you have any guilty pleasures that maybe you might be out in public and people would be like, wait, is that Kyle? Is that the wellness daddy? Is he really, eating, drinking, doing this?
Yeah. You know what? I think it's kind of embarrassing to say that I don't know if I do anymore. Like, I think my guilty pleasure is like sometimes I'll be out late, and people are like, "Wellness daddy, isn't it your bedtime?" Like, like they'll give me shit like that. So, I pretty much removed almost all my vices, not necessarily because I really wanted to, but because I kind of had to. And so I'm just at this stage where I'm not down to like really mess things up because I work so hard to have things be okay. So occasionally I'll have a misstep. Like I think when I went home, yeah, this is okay. This is it. When I went home, there's this place called Soul Food, and it's Puerto Rican food, and I'm Puerto Rican, and so there's this steak sandwich that it's so good. But instead of getting it on bread because no gluten, of course, I get it on plantains. But
Yum.
but it's like obviously cooked in seed oils and like all this stuff. So I think that one is really good.
I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah,
I like it. And it just depends on where you are on your healing journey. Sometimes we have to put some of our vices on the side, and other times, we have a little bit more space to maybe not be so wellness focused, right? And I feel like it all just depends on where we are and how we are and how we feel about it. So, thanks for sharing that.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like this has been such an incredible and healing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Mhm.
This has been awesome to have a chance to pick your brain. Everybody listening at home, I hope this has been healing on your healing journey. Until next time.